Unit 4 review, homeostasis and body systems. As you might remember, the main objectives of this unit are to talk about the different organs and functions of the human body systems, discuss how those body systems interact to maintain that internal balance called homeostasis, describe malfunctions of homeostasis and how they can lead to disease and death, and to talk about how our bodies regulate themselves through feedback mechanisms. So let's break down the different body systems. You should know each of these and their function along with some organs. So digestive system, pictured on the left, includes things like stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and the job is to break down and absorb nutrients. Remember that this is for solid waste only. Endocrine system is next. The endocrine system includes lots of different glands, both male and female. Many of those glands are in the brain. The function of these are to release hormones or slow messages to regulate the body. Remember, the pancreas is a really important organ, part of the endocrine system that releases insulin to regulate your sugar levels. Circulatory system includes the heart. Its job is to transport materials through the blood in order to get to all the different parts of the body. Excretory system, including things like the kidney, the bladder. These are to release metabolic waste. So when we talk about waste, we're really talking about things like sweat and urine. Respiratory system is for gas exchange. You can see that some of the major parts are the trachea, the lung, the diaphragm, the nose and mouth. The nervous system, including the brain and spinal cord, as well as all the nerves in the body. That job is to send messages to regulate the body, and these are really fast messages. The immune system is kind of all over the body. Really, when we talked about the immune system, it was more about the cells, so the white blood cells all over the body. And the job of the immune system is to protect the body from getting sick. Lastly, we have the reproductive system, which the whole job is to make offspring. You can see the female at the top and the male at the bottom. Some of the organs or structures that you should really know: ovaries, uterus, fallopian tubes, urethra, and testes. There are three major interactions with body systems that we should probably be aware of, but there's even more than this that you could really talk about. So if there is a question on the Regents asking you to talk about how two body systems interact, these are some ideas for answers. First of all, you have the circulatory and respiratory. The function of that interaction is really to get oxygen and carbon dioxide through the body within the blood, so that the different cells in the body can get oxygen in order to get energy, and carbon dioxide can be removed from different body cells. The circulatory and digestive systems are also very similar. Instead of sending gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, we're sending nutrients through the blood. And lastly, the nervous and endocrine system. Both of those systems send and receive messages just at different speeds, and that's in order to regulate the body. There are three major malfunctions that you should probably be aware of. You may know way more than this, which is great. Remember, we did posters on lots of malfunctions throughout units 4, 5, and 6, so you can refer to any of those really. Diabetes is the number one malfunction you should know that affects the endocrine system. And diabetes is really when a person can't regulate their blood sugar levels because either their insulin isn't produced enough or the insulin doesn't respond properly to the cells. And this is really a problem with the pancreas. Again, the pancreas is the structure that secretes or releases the insulin. Asthma is another good one to remember. Asthma affects the respiratory system. And this is just when a person has spasms in their lungs, in the bronchi of the lungs, and they can't breathe easily. So you can see in the picture on the right, the airway gets much smaller with a person who is dealing with asthma. And lastly, kidney stones are another malfunction. This affects the excretory system, and this is when hard mass forms in the kidneys, so these little, almost like little rocks, and usually they're made of calcium deposits. Lastly, for Unit 4, we should know about feedback mechanisms. And before we talk about the mechanisms, we should reference the word homeostasis. This is a word that you definitely need to know, and it's all throughout every unit, especially dealing with living things. It's the balance in organisms that must be achieved to stay alive. So in order for you to be alive, you have to maintain homeostasis. You have to have this balance. And it's a balance with your temperature, with your sugar levels, with the amount of nutrients, your gas levels, everything like that. So feedback mechanisms are basically lots of steps, kind of a cause and effect that allows you to stay in homeostasis. There's two different types of feedback mechanisms. There's positive and negative. Positive is when an action continues to increase over time. So an example of this is when a woman is going through childbirth. In order for her to continue to make contractions, a hormone called oxytocin is released and continues to be released in order to increase the number of contractions. And you can see that picture on your handout on the left, as well as on the image at the top right. And the second one is called negative feedback, and that's when an action will start and kind of stop or turn on and turn off over time to regulate the body, kind of like a thermostat and how it controls temperature. So the first example that I have is that sweating starts when we get hot, but then the body stops sweating when we cool down to a normal temperature. So you start to sweat, you stop sweating. You start to sweat, you stop sweating. And that continues just to keep your temperature normal. A second example, and this is a really important one to know, again, we talked about diabetes earlier. Insulin is released anytime that the blood sugar or glucose level rises. So think after you eat a meal. But when the levels go back to normal, insulin is no longer released. So it just kind of goes back and forth in that same process. And you have another picture on the right on your handout that describes this process, and another hormone called glucagon that is released when the sugar levels are too low. So don't forget to write out your 2 questions to check for understanding as well as their answers for this video.